But glad to be here. I got into beekeeping. We moved out here 20 some odd years ago, and we had a great garden. We did very well. And then the grasshoppers came after a few years and just devoured everything. So my go-to was 7 Dust. And so I bought 7 Dust by the 25-pound bag and put it on everything, and it worked great. And it killed, after a while I started noticing there were no pollinators at all. And so basically what we did was we just gave up on gardening. And the other thing on that was they started only making a 1-pound shaker can of this 7 Dust. And so 7 Dust is very lethal to bees because they have little hairs all over their bodies and they collect that dust to it. They're negatively charged, so that is attracted to their body. And so when they take that back to the nest, the larvae end up ingesting it and it kills the whole hive. So if you were to have bees or you need to spray something in your garden or something, it's best to do that at night. And the best poison, I think, is the one that kills automatically, because that way it's not getting taken back to the hive for the rest of the hive to get killed off. But I didn't know any of that. I just noticed that all of the pollinators were gone. When they started the only 1-pound manufacturer selling of the 7 Dust is when I started looking at carbonyl and finding out what it was and what it did. And so then I decided I didn't want to use it at all. Well, then the grasshoppers just took over everything. It was kind of disappointing to us, but we always want to try to grow something. And we always try again. We're probably best at tomatoes. But I got into beekeeping because my daughter could not sleep through the night without coughing. And so when she was like 6, she was, an infant, so under a year old. And so every night she'd be coughing in the baby bed, in our room, and we'd be hovering, making sure she was okay. And when she got a year old, we'd heard about raw, unfiltered honey. And so when she got a year old, we gave her a teaspoon of raw, unfiltered honey. It was Round Rock honey. And Round Rock's premise was that they bought honey from Texas beekeepers and mixed it all so that you had all the pollens from all around. So we were buying it, and it was like $18 a pound. I said, and when we gave her the first teaspoon, it knocked the cough out. That was it. So every night we gave her a teaspoon of honey. She slept all through the night. We didn't have to give her any kind of drug, any kind of medication, and we felt a lot better about that. So that's, then I thought, well, I want to get the cost of this down. That was a very naive thought. Because what I found now is, what I found, about 12 years ago was I need to have about at least 50 hives to make enough honey to sell to everyone and make something off of it. So it took actually 7 years to make a profit off this. And when Tammy asked me to come do this, she said something about beekeeping for a profit. And I was like, what? So I don't know that I can speak to that real well because it's taken a long time. But also, we make honey. We have a couple of hundred hives. We move them around Texas. And we go off the same premise that Round Rock used to go off of. Now their honey's imported from different parts of the world. But we also buy honey from one producer so far. And I only have bought honey from that one producer for the past 12 years. So now, this was a bad honey year down in South Texas. So I am searching for another honey supplier. My bees didn't make honey down in south of San Antonio, and the guy I buy honey from did not make. He's got 10,000 hives, and he didn't make anything. So it's not looking too good for Texas honey. I have some, but we're hoping to make more here soon. But so when I thought, I want to get into beekeeping, I took a 4-hour class that my wife had bought a Groupon and sent me to this class, and I was wearing a suit like this. This is a cotton suit. It's very hot, especially here in Texas. I mean, there's no breathability on that. We have other things now that have triple ventilation that helps a lot. But I thought, okay, I want to get into this. Well, I really didn't like those bugs crawling all over me. It was kind of a freaky deal, you know. And there was a teenage boy there that was homeschooled, and he was taking a class, and he was doing this for his class. His mom dropped him off and she left. And there was probably about 15, 16 adults, and then this young man, he was probably about 14, 15. He could care less about them bees, and he was just flipping dirt everywhere. He was kicking it. So when you kick a beehive, you know, they do everything off vibration, so they kind of freak out about it. And so every time he'd do something like that, all the adults would be going, oh my God. And so finally, the class was over, and I was like, gosh, I don't know if I want to do this or not. So I started going to a beekeeper meeting over here in Bridgeport, and it was in the library, at the public library at Bridgeport. And we basically just looked at an American Bee Journal, which is a magazine, and this old man, Charles Steele, would go through that magazine every meeting, you know, a new monthly magazine every meeting. And that was basically our meeting. So about 2 years into beekeeping, I really started having a hard time. There were some pests and parasites out there that were really attacking the bees. And so back in the 80s, you know, we had colony collapse disorder. They really didn't know what the cause of that was. It could be several different things. Even now, we're not sure what colony collapse disorder is totally caused from. But one thing that it is caused from is a varroa mite. So this little mite gets on the bees, and it chews on the bees and eats its fat stores. The problem with that is that the cuts never heal. So there's 13 naturally occurring viruses in the hive, and when opened all the time with those little cuts to those different viruses, they get 3 or 4 of them, they become unproductive. The beekeeper doesn't know what to do. The beekeeper might not want to use a chemical treatment. They might want to try to use just natural things. And without proper management, looking and noticing what's going on with the hive, you can lose your bees. So then the beekeeper gets depressed and gives up. So we've had a lot of beekeepers that we've had that happen to, and they sell, you know, so their equipment, their initial cost on all their equipment could be around $1,000. So then they sell everything for nothing, trying to get out of it because they have given up. So we don't want that. So my company sells treated nukes for varroa, and that's your first treatment, so that the new beekeeper has time to get used to their beehive and grow into that. And myself, I did not want to treat at all, and I had 32 hives I was managing for a raw dairy guy, and 16 of those hives died. So before they died, I saw symptoms. One was a deformed wing virus, and another symptom was that means that the wings are broken, so they can't fly if they want to. So you can actually see that and tell there's a problem with that bee. So, and then another symptom was crawling around on the ground in circles, acting like they couldn't fly back to the hive. So, and some of these things can also be symptoms of pesticides. So you have to kind of decipher what's going on with the bees and try to figure that out. And so, as our bee club over here, we have monthly meetings, and when we try to help people figure those things out. So if you decide to go and be a beekeeper, and you buy some bees, then get all your equipment and everything. Don't just give up if things go bad. Come on over and try to find somebody to help you or get some advice. I would say what happened to me when I got into the 2-year era and I was losing bees. There came a master beekeeper program through the Texas State Apiary Commission. So that's the Texas Apiary Inspection Service is exactly what it's called. So TAIS. And I'm giving you that because that's a very important resource for you to go to online and see different videos and things from the state inspectors. So they are more knowledgeable than anyone that I know. So I took this master beekeeper course because I wanted to be the best beekeeper that I could be, and plus I was getting older. I've been a jack of all trades, and so I wanted to be a master of something, and decided to be serious about this course and took it. And this This is my 5th year notebook to be handed in, and y'all are more than welcome to take a look at it. But it's just full of public service credits, speaking like this to people, helping people with bees, things like that. And then, and I got all that, and I still don't know anything. So the bees are quiet. You know, they don't really tell you. They can't really tell you. They're like little kids, like our little daughter. You know, she couldn't tell us what was wrong. But you have to be able to look at them and see what's going on with them. Some people will ask, can we just put the bees out there and let them be? And you could probably do that for anywhere from 2 to 7 years. But most likely they're gonna just fade away, dissipate, die. There are bees that have been in trees reportedly for, 50, 60 years. So those are actually the kind of bees that we want to go and find. And when people want removals or something like that, we like to use those genetics to put back into our bees. So the reason for that is Africanization. So y'all heard of Africanized bees? So back in the 80s, I see it was it's like the mid-70s. As kids, we were all freaking out, going, "Oh my God, the killer bees are coming!" And what are they going to do? They talk about putting up a net down there on the Mexican border or something, trying to catch these bees from coming over. Bees could fly over the net. I was a kid and I knew that. But we had horror movies, with bees getting in cars and attacking people through the air conditioning systems and all that kind of stuff. So we don't really like to say Africanized bees in Texas anymore. We kind of like to say hot bees. So if you hear somebody say, "Oh, these bees are hot," he ain't talking about the temperature. He's talking about the anger level. So when Africanized bees attack, there could just be some of the genetic material in them, and they would still behave like Africanized bees. So one thing that they do is they attack in mass. So European bees, the ones that all of our bees are, none of our honeybees are native to America. So they all came from Europe, except for the Africanized line. So when the Africanized line came in, that bee turns very aggressive. It attacks in mass. Where your European bee, and when I say in mass, I'm talking like 1,000 at a time. So it probably would take 250, 300 stings for me to end up in the hospital and possibly dead. If you were allergic, you could be killed right away. So when you're thinking about beekeeping, if you've never been stung by a bee, you probably should go and talk to your doctor and see about what they think your system can handle. I've been stung 20, 30 times and not had much of a reaction. I drank like half a bottle of children's Zyrtec that I had in the glove compartment, After the first 20, you really don't feel anything. So you just keep on going. But I drank that children's Zyrtec and everything was fine. But there's some people who are very sensitive to it. You can get stung one time and your arms swell up huge. So that is just a natural reaction of your body. But when you get stung and your throat swells up, that's when we're talking danger. So anytime your throat swells up, then there's a problem. So I was over here off of 51, going through a guy's hive. I was managing for him, and there was sumac blooming. And typically this is a hive tool right here. Typically I'll reach in there with a hive tool and get me a big old bite of honey, and that was the last time I ever did that, because I found out within 5 minutes my throat started closing. And so the daughter that I wanted to give honey to, she was with me, but she was only about 5 years old at that time. And I said, we gotta get in the truck, baby. And so we got in the truck, and I got up here to 51, I had to make a decision, go left and go home, or come right and go to the hospital. And I thought, I don't wanna scare this kid, and so I went home. I took a Benadryl. It took 4 hours for my throat to go down. So when sumac's blooming, I don't test the honey. and I don't take a great big old dip like I usually do, like I used to. So things like that, you just have to, think about. Now, when we have new beekeepers come in to the bee club, it is very rare. And I don't even think I thought about it. And we had cows and horses and pigs. All of those have gestation periods. So when you buy a cow, a horse, or a pig, you want to know how long is it going to take for the sow to have babies, or for the cow or the mare, whatever. But it seems like we don't really ask that about bugs, So on bees, it takes, from the time the queen lays an egg, it takes 21 days for that egg to hatch, and that's a worker bee, which is a girl. So all workers are girls. On a drone bee, which are just used for breeding, from the time the egg is laid, is 24 days till that drone hatches, or emerges. So it hatches, the egg hatches at 3 days. It goes through a pupation process after that, and then it emerges as an adult bee on day 24. The queen does it in 16 days. So when her egg is laid, she hatches in 3 days, just like everybody else, but she is fed royal jelly so that she is grown profusely. And if y'all, I don't know if y'all tried to find the queen over here, but this, when they dissipate, you can see her, and she is much bigger. So she's like almost two times the size of a worker bee. And her coloring is a little bit different. Some queens are black. This one is black and kind of orangish looking. The black ones are really hard for me to find. But when she emerges from her cell, which is a cell that's going to be hanging down, this is one of the most important things to know about your beekeeping. Is if you have cells like this in your hive that are hanging down, then that is a queen cell. And so if the queen emerges out of that, then if there is a queen in the hive, which is probably not likely, but if there is, then she is likely to go kill that queen, the other queen, I mean. And so then you're left with a hive that has a queen, but is not bred yet. So she has to go out on a mating flight. A good breeding for a queen is at least 30 drones, and they are bred in the air. So the queen will fly 2 miles away, and the drones will fly a mile away from their hive, and they do that to try to stop the inbreeding. So she flies 2 miles away through a drone congregation area, and all the drones, the fastest 30 drones come, and the fastest one breeds her all the way through number 30 or number 60, however many. She will take on at least 5 million sperm. And then when she goes back to the hive, the last drone, so what happens with the drone? Well, when he does his thing and he pulls away, he is disemboweled and falls to the ground and dies. And so, and at other times of the year when there's no nectar available, right now we got a lot of flowers and nectar, there's a lot of drones out there, they're very happy. They go around, they visit other hives, and they eat, and they're fed, they're fed by trophallaxis and everything. So then when there's nothing to eat, then they're pushed out of the hive. And then if they come back, which they always try to come back, their legs are chewed off and then they're pushed out. They don't do very good takeoffs without legs, so not able to fly back into the hive. Yeah, that's supposed to be fun. I don't know. So, right, yeah. So, but the point of that is that the queen can choose which eggs to fertilize and not fertilize. So what they have found with Africanized queens is that they choose the semen that has more Africanization in it to fertilize their eggs with. So in order for us to get away from the Africanization, when we find a hive that is aggressive, we go in and take that queen out and put in a European queen so that we can replace those genetics. And so in Texas in the past, I started beekeeping like 12 years ago, got into the Master Beekeeper program. actively started, trying to change those genetics in my own hives. And now we have bee inspectors that say that they have not run across very many aggressive hives at all. So you can't tell by just the size of the bee or the color of the bee. It's a DNA thing. They try to do they try to measure the wings and measure the thoraxes and all that, and you just can't do it, because when the bee goes to a flower and drinks nectar, or she goes and gets water, then her body implodes. It just stretches. So the bee can look bigger just by having a liquid in it, that it's gone and ingested. So the other day I had a lot of hairy vetch growing at home, and that is a good nectar source for your bees, and it's also good for your land to replace the nutrients into the land. So it's something that I like to have. And the bees were just huge. They were super huge. I was like, what hive are these bees coming from? And I got to looking, and all the hives had big bees because they were all full of nectar. So it's not something that I really noticed, in the past 10 years, but I really noticed it the other day. And then, of course, when they release their nectar, then they go back down in size.
What did you say that plant was?
There was that
The
plant.
what?
The plant that you.
Hairy
vetch.
Hairy vetch. Hairy. H-I-H-A-I-R-Y. Vetch, yeah. So there's a crown vetch and a common vetch. Those are not good for bees. Which brings us to the length of the bee's straw. So it's called a proboscis. And their proboscis is only an Italian bee. There's different breeds of bees. The most prevalent in America is Italian, because that's what was imported in the late 1800s to America. The proboscis is only 6 millimeters long. So that is not long enough to go down honeysuckle. If it were overflowing with nectar, they could take waters off the top, but they can't go all the way. Have you guys ever seen a butterfly's proboscis? Man, I've seen some unfold like that long. And so when I have butterfly people go, "Oh, the bees are hurting the butterflies," I'm like, you guys got like almost a 2-foot proboscis. I don't know what the deal is. They can go get anything, But so it's a very small amount. So whenever I started beekeeping, I thought the bigger the flower, the more nectar there's got to be, and the more honey we can make. Well, it's not that way. A sunflower, a coneflower, anything with multiple florets, in the center of the flower, that is multiple florets. It takes 1 million blooms to make a pound of honey. This is a pound and a half right here. So 1 million blooms. In order for us to get that, we need to have plants that are multiple blooming. So clovers, the hairy vetch has multiple blooms on it. Sunflowers. Echinacea grows natural out here in the grasslands. Every now and then you'll see some echinacea coming up. And so that's the purple cone flower. So that I do well in this area. My personal thing about gardening is I am terrible about water. Native things are better for me because I don't want to go water it. I walk past it, it's dying, and I'm still walking. So I'm not very good at water. But so native things like the native sunflower, the coneflower, Indian blanket flowers. The problem with some of those is that they're only in a short-lived time. Like you see right now, we got the purple horsemen out there, and the green leopard horsemen's coming out this way. The Indian blanket flowers they're going down on their last leg. So I like the Vitex. Y'all know what Vitex is? So look that up. It's also called monk's pepper. It's rumored that the honey will lessen the libido of a man. Don't know. I've got a couple of Vitex trees. But they smell great. So today I was standing out, and they have multiple blooms all over them. I mean, they've got cajillions blooms. And they smell very nice. They're purple. They're drought resistant and deer resistant, so they're good items to put out there. Let's see, the native sunflower, it blooms in July. That's one of our problems here in this area, is that we don't have things that will be blooming in July to support your bees. So if you went and took your spring honey, which is typically this color, they come, every nectar source will make a different color of honey. This honey was taken out of an old farmhouse in Sunset, and about 8 years ago. And it was this color when we got it out, and it tasted like sorghum syrup. I'm not a fan of sorghum syrup, but it's still good. It will granulate, all raw and unfiltered honey, meaning raw is that you put it through a sieve like this, that will allow the pollen grains to go through. Unfiltered, so that's unfiltered. Raw means you haven't cooked it, you haven't brought it up to 150 degrees and held it for 30 minutes. That would be pasteurization. So if you want raw unfiltered honey, you need a sieve like that. If the honey granulates, you boil a pan of water, pull it off the fire and put it in. I don't like to put plastic bottles in hot water like that, or microwaves. If you microwave the pollen, it will kill it. You might as well just be drinking high fructose corn syrup. But you can put it on the dash of your car in the plastic, and it won't deform the plastic. In a big bottle like this, a small bottle like this, that could happen. So you got to be careful about how long you leave it in that hot car. The temperature of the honey is not going to get up to 150. The car might be 139 or so, but you'd have to get this entire bottle, past that point, and then you need a 120 degree day all day long. Let's see. We talked about a little bit about the pests and diseases. Diseases also, in the past, we just used terramycin and powdered sugar for everything. So if you had, this is from me reading older books. If they had a problem with the queen, then they would replace the queen and put powdered sugar and terramycin in the hive. If they had a problem with dysentery, they would replace the queen and put powdered sugar and terramycin in the hive. Well, they pulled terramycin years ago. We can't use terramycin anymore. So, if your hive has a problem, then a veterinarian has to diagnose it and prescribe that terramycin or whatever they're using now. I don't use anything like that in my hive anymore. You just don't have the opportunity. But I did find a picture of my daughter when she was 13 or so. She's 20 now, where she was doctoring one of her hives with powdered sugar and terramycin when we did that. So that's just how things change, and for the better for all of us. Your extraction, it can be as simple as boiling a pan of water, putting a bread knife in it, and then taking and scraping the cappings. So the cappings come from the bees. All the wax comes from the bees. The bees have to ingest at least 8 to 10 pounds of honey or sugar syrup to make the comb that the queen lays in, or that they put pollen in, and they have babies in, things like that. So when the honey is dried down below 18.6%, the bees, when they bring the nectar in, it's 80% water. So flower nectar is roughly 80% water. They put enzymes from their body into it. It goes into a separate sac that does not go into their belly. If you tell me that my honey is bee vomit, I get very offended very easily, because it is not coming from a digestive source. It's coming from the honey sac. So the honey sac. So then when the bee has the nectar, she puts the enzymes in it. She takes it back to the house, to the colony, and then she passes it to a house bee. And the house bee then puts more enzymes into it. And then they blow bubbles with it. and what they're trying to do is expand it, in order to dehydrate it. So in order for that not to ferment and become thick like that, they have to pull 60% of the water out. So 18.6% is our target. When the bees cap the honey, when they make wax cells and then they cap the honey, that tells us that it's ready. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I've found that they're right on the money. If I want to test it, I can get something called a refractometer. Where's your So your refractometer, if you make homemade beer or wine or anything, you use a refractometer. But you would put a drop of honey on here, close the window, hold it up toward the light, and then you turn it just like a scope to see what the measurement was. And so there's a blue line and a white line in there. Where those blue line and white lines intersect, that's the amount of water that's in your honey. So it has to be, if it's not below 18.6%, then you would want to consume it quickly. As a guy who sells honey, I don't want to sell honey that is going to ferment on you, because then you're not going to want to buy honey from me. Because there'll be a foul odor, it will have bubbles in it. It won't be like mead, which is honey wine. It will be sour, and it probably wouldn't make you drunk, you know, so it's not something you're gonna really enjoy. That's the, I knew some guys who had harvested several barrels of honey, and it went bad, and there was, once it goes bad, there's nothing you can do with it. You might as well have made mead with it before it went bad, to get something out of it. But the best thing to do is just test it and see. I think this one is probably an expensive one.
It was a Mother's Day gift.
Mother's Day.
Yes.
So my first one was $75. This looks like almost the same unit. Then the one I bought off Amazon just a little while ago was $9. If it says B on it, it's $70, no matter what. So you don't necessarily have to have it, but you do have to have, if it's a refractometer, it's got to be able to measure water. Some refractometers measure other things. Just water is what we're interested in. Let's see. Oh, so as hobbyists or homesteaders, you're probably going to have a pretty simple operation of extracting honey. This is one of the best ones that we had, other than the handle. My kids were young, so they thought this was fun. But now, when I come in with a couple of pallets of honey, if I told one of my girls to go spin it with this thing, they'd go, "Oh, you're crazy." So now we have, extractors that are motorized and spin 24 to 36 frames at a time. So it's a lot faster and easier. But this is not bad. I mean, when you spin this crank, the worst thing about it is keeping it still. So so it's going very fast in there right now. Just me going at this speed. So you're not really wanting to go breakneck and hurt yourself. And the other thing is, when this thing is like a washing machine. If it's not balanced, if you put your frames in and one is half empty and one is half full, or I'm sorry, if one is full and one is half empty, then you find out this thing will bounce around all over the place. And we've heard all kinds of stories about how the husband and wife tried to hold down the honey extractor while one of them spun it, So I'd like to just tie mine down with ratchet straps, and we didn't really have that problem. If there's some way you can mount it, then that's nice. Usually one this size, you're going to use it, you might, and then get all the honey you can out of it, and then you take it outside and give it to your bees so they can clean it up, and then you rinse it off with the hose and you go store it somewhere. So this one that's this size or smaller, this is like a 4 frame, and you can buy a 2 frame. You don't have to have a huge one. The other end of it that is something I'm not interested in because it's not raw and unfiltered honey is the honey. Most of the honey that you buy at big box stores it's in plastic, and the reason, and then they don't like for it to granulate. So every place that I sell honey, we sell honey at 20 some odd different places. Every place I sell honey, the honey will granulate. It's raw and unfiltered, it's gonna granulate at some point. So people don't like to buy granulated honey, and I've heard people tell me that they will throw it away. So what I do is I go out and get the granulated honey, swap it with the regular liquid honey, and then I take this home and warm it up in my warmer and liquefy it, and then take it, back to that store or somewhere else, to sell it from my home, whatever. So it never goes bad. So you don't want to throw your honey out. It's a very expensive thing. I mean, it takes 8 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So if you want to harvest your honey from a frame like that over there, and you take this and you do the scrape method and you scrape it off, then 8 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. If that is a half a pound of wax, and you're trying to sell your honey for a low amount for $10, just to make the math easy, then that's $40 worth of honey that has been consumed and digested to make that wax. So that's not a method that I prescribe to. So, but you can't do it. It's not a problem. What I like to do is I like to cut that wax capping off, put it in here, spin it, and then I give that frame already made comb of wax back to the bees, and it doesn't, if they are still on a nectar flow, it doesn't take long for them to fill that back up and start all over, and then you can go take it again. So they're hoarding creatures, and if you want to use that to your advantage, that's the best way to do it, because they're gonna go and harvest that nectar anyway, and if they run out of room, then they will leave. So it's in your best interest to take the honey from them so that they can keep making more and keep living there. When we get close to winter, then we some beekeepers, I don't really like to take all the honey from them, because that is a natural source of carbohydrates, and it has protein and enzymes from the flowers that they've gotten. So if you take all that, I think you're just taking away too much from them. You're taking away natural substances. But some beekeepers take all the honey, and then they fill one of these boards with a sugar patty. It's kind of like, this is what we call a pollen patty. That's a pollen substitute. It's when bees don't have pollen to get from the flowers, then sometimes we feed them something like this. But so a lot of people make this candy board, or what it's called, and you put that on top of your hive in the winter, and the bees come up and they eat the candy. So it serves two purposes. It feeds your bees, and when the bees are in a cluster inside the hive, they are aspirating condensation. So as they're breathing, air is coming up, wet air, and hitting the bottom of this top here. And it goes, so this is an inner cover. I don't use inner covers. If you decide to, that's great. But so half the air, a lot of the air is going to go up this hole, and then if you have this insulation on it, it will further condensate. But on the inside here, it's going to condensate, and then it's going to rain back down on the bees. When it's warm outside, that's not a problem. But when it's 20 degrees outside, and they're making condensation in the hive, and it's falling back down on them in the form of rain, then that will slowly make the other bees die. And what bees do is, on the inside of a cluster, when it's cold outside, the outside bees move inward to warm up, then they're the inside bees. Then the inside bees go up to the outside of the cluster, and they tremble to warm up the rest of the cluster. Well, when they get wore out, then they go in. So it's a constant changing of the guard there. But when they're all wet, they can't get warm. So eventually they can just die from the condensation. So it's good to have ventilation, and this does serve the purpose of dissolving that water. It helps the sugar dissolve. So it's kind of like a desiccant material. It sucks up water. So it's a good thing, in my opinion. I just don't like the idea of taking all the honey, and you don't have to. When I use a candy board, I don't take all the honey from it. I want them to have a natural source. And a lot of times, you can leave the honey over winter, and if they use it, they use it. If they don't, then you get to harvest it in the spring. So for me, it's just insurance, you know, to keep them healthy. I think the honey is more healthier than just sugar. I mean, sugar is just carbohydrate. There's no protein in it. Let's see. These suits, like I was saying, they're very hot. On Amazon, I think we got these things here for like $4.
I wanna say something about the suit. That is not my suit. My husband is very cheap, and he picked the cheapest suit he could find, and he has been stung nearly every single time he has gone out to the hive. I have one that's ventilated that I got at Manor Lake, and they usually put them on sale the first week of March for about 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. I mean, if you're saving money, you save money. I would not suggest this suit. One that's ventilated is so much, because they do get hot.
Yeah. Yes, they do. Yeah. So, and you know, I've heard many stories of people, you know, who want to just go out to their hive and look at it for a second and leave. Some people treat their bees like pets, and there's some legends, you know, some stories about beekeepers dying and a swarm of bees showing up at the graveyard, and people believe that those are that beekeeper's bees. So, you know, that's fine, you know, it's possible. But sometimes we use smoke, so this is a smoker, and the reason why we use smoke is that bees give off a different pheromones. This thing's smoking now, Tammy. You didn't dust it.
Yeah.
Didn't clean it out. So using smoke, that masks the pheromones. So there's anger pheromones, and of course I'm sure they have love pheromones, whatever they got. When the anger pheromone comes out, it smells like bananas when you open a banana, and so the audible of the hive raises very high, and you can tell that they're not happy with you. And so if you put a little puff of smoke on them, it usually calms them down. Now the beekeepers in South America with the Africanized bees, they have smokers that stand like this tall. They're probably almost as big as this. I mean, it takes a person to carry the thing around, and that's all their job is to sit there and bellow that smoke for those bees to keep them calmed down. So we just do, you know, with your European bees, we just try to do a little puff. It's not a big thing, you know. It's kind of like, you know, I used to be a smoker. Tammy has this to plug her smoker with. I used to try to keep up with the plug. I can't keep up.
That's why I have a metal pail there
Yeah.
that I keep it in. That way I don't melt my plastic one. I might or might not have before. And then, so I keep everything in there. Now, I don't keep the plastic baggie in there. I just brought that to show y'all that.
So this is pine straw. She uses pine straw for her smoker. There's a lot of different options out there. This is the easiest stuff to light, and it blows cool smoke rather than hot smoke. If you blow hot smoke on the bees, you can burn their wings. And at one time, when I first started beekeeping, the bees were like pulling away like that, and I was like, "What's wrong with you?" And so I put my hand in front of it, took my glove off, put my hand in front of it. It was hot, and what I was using was a tall ragweed that had died, and crunching it up and putting it in there. So I wouldn't use it anymore. In Wise County, it's very dry. You know, Montague County, all these counties around here is very dry, and so you don't want to be the beekeeper that sets everything on fire. I still carry one of those air charged fire extinguishers, you know. So if I'm gonna, and I've gone to using, is that the bees?
Yes.
I've gone to using liquid smoke in water in a spray bottle, and that it works okay when I need something in a pinch. But the worst thing you can do is go out there without smoke and just open the lid. Your face is right there. If you don't have this, at least this, $5 is great for mosquitoes too. Then you could really have a problem. So one guy I know that did that, he had 9 hives, he got to hive 7, he was checking them before he was going on vacation or something, and he was just peeking, seeing if they was all right, and man, they hit him in the face, and he became allergic. So that's another thing with beekeeping, you can become more immune to their stings, or you can become more allergic. So the more stings you have, the more it could be possible that you could become allergic. So I don't like to get stung. It hurts for one thing, especially in my fat. It really hurts in my fat. My ears, boy, it makes me mad when they stick me in the ears. These veils here, they like are right next to your ear. So sometimes I'll put a bandana on, either around my throat because of my double chin, or my ears to keep them from stinging those places. So. And I don't use those. I try to use the round top veil, so a little further away from your ear. This is a
plastic, and it looks like a African safari hat that I stick in mine that pooches it out.
Yeah.
That way it can't get up against me. Stephen refuses, and he gets it on the chin all the time.
Yeah.
And he gets mad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It makes you mad to get stung. Yeah. So this is, tell us about this.
Okay, well, my sister actually gave me this for after school pickup because I was sweating really bad. But this is one of those little fans that you get, you put around and you turn it on and it blows air. So I wear it underneath my suit just to keep the airflow because I sweat, I get hot, and when I get hot, I get cranky and I get anxious, and so I don't do as good a job at that point. So I try to keep myself as cool as I can. Donny has a real cool cooling vest that he puts ice packs in it.
Yeah, it's a chemical that it doesn't have to be in a freezer. It just has to be in a cold environment to turn these blocks hard, and they last for a couple hours. But the first thing I noticed about it was it brought my heart rate down. And so you're thinking, why would we need? If you're doing this for a tax exemption and you have to have 6 of them, then if you spent 15 minutes in each hive, what is that? That's an hour and a half, I think, something like that. So an hour and a half in the Texas sun and something like this, you're crazy. So you're going to be very hot and sweaty in that situation. But so that brings us to, what time do you work your bees? You work your bees between 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Of course, 3 o'clock is the hardest part of the day. You don't want to be out there. But the reason why is that the foragers are going and collecting the pollen and nectar between 10 and 2. Some flowers I didn't say some flowers, different types of flowers give different nectar at different times of the day. So even in the evening, this honey was made in the winter, and it's probably going to be from something called wild heather and mistletoe. So that would be in November and February. So there's not, on some days there's not much sunshine, but that's what's available to them at that time. So that's the reason why the honey is this color. It's because those nectar sources put out that kind of nectar. So certain plants need a certain temperature, a certain amount of sunshine hours. The hairy vetch I was talking about needs 40 hours of sunshine to make good nectar. If it doesn't get that 40 hours of sunshine, it's going to be a prolonged nectar flow, and the plant's not going to be pollinated as well as it would. It's a good thing for you, for the beekeeper, but not necessarily a good thing for the bees. Sometimes it could go to the point that if there's so much rain, then you're having to feed your bees sugar syrup, and you're seeing plenty of flowers. And so that's one thing when at selling honey, people say, well, will you feed your bees? Yeah, if the bees are starving, I'm damn sure feed them. But when there's flowers, and we don't take honey that has been fed sugar syrup. Now, I've had a lot of new beekeepers in the past 12 years say, well, my honey that we fed sugar syrup to our bees is the best honey I ever ate. And your honey will be the best honey you ever ate, no matter what, because you're going to go through all this work. But we don't like to do that because it's not flower enzymes. It's not flower proteins that are in that honey. So we don't want to be harvesting in those times. So, and of course, when they're starving, you're not harvesting any honey because they don't have nothing to eat. So if they don't make it to the next nectar flow, you won't be making no honey anyway. The summer bee will live up to 6 weeks. They could live just a couple of days, they could live the whole 6 weeks, but when they start to die off is when they have been going working nectar flows, when flowers are blooming, and so they work themselves to death. The bees will most likely never taste any honey that they helped make. They'll be eating honey that somebody else made, so it's called a altruistic environment. So they do something for somebody else and they're not expecting anything in return. They just do it. What else? That's a lot of information, y'all. If y'all have any questions? Good, I'm so glad. You have any questions.
Well, just to kind of go over some more of the equipment, whenever you go pick up your bees, it's something similar to this. This is cardboard. Donny's are
We have wood, but
wood
we've gone to
Yeah.
plastic. Everybody's gone to plastic nowadays.
and so this is kind of hard, and this is what we call an in-hive feeder. And so, when you buy your bees, they fill this full of sugar water, and this little part that comes out has like a little ladder so they can get down into the water and not get to the sugar water and not drown. And then you'll have about 4 or 5 frames full of bees, and that's what you pick up, and it's taped shut, and that's what you take your bees home in. Donny has amazing bees. I just want to say that. I did a lot of research because I was in the club almost a year and a half before I got my bees, and I went to South Texas and got some bees, and they're still alive, but I had some issues with them. So anyway, buying bees local is perfect. Now for me, this is your typical hive setup, and here's another one of these. I happen to have a flow hive just because I have issues with my shoulders, and picking up one of these boxes full of honey is pretty heavy.
Oh, it's 80 or 90 pounds. I spent $2,000 on back shots because I was greedy trying to pick up heavy supers, which you want to try to use what you do what you want to do.
Right.
But there's a medium that it's 40 pounds when you pick it full of honey when you pick it up. So 80 pound. Taking the 80 pounds of honey is great, but not when your back goes out.
Yeah. My husband helps me with the heavy lifting, but these do get pretty heavy. So I do have a flow hive. They are very expensive. I don't necessarily recommend you get this. This is just as good.
Is each box a hive, or you said you have to have 6 to be active? So is each box considered a hive, or?
This would be a colony, one hive.
One.
So in every hive, there's a queen.
Right.
If the queen dies or something, the tax person does not know that. But,
Right.
but if you don't replace her,
Go.
don't. Yeah, right.
You have to have 6
Most
of them.
tax people aren't wanting to come out and look at your hives.
Mhm.
I have heard of one over in Fire Mountain that she wants to look in the hives. She wants to see your records that you're selling honey, wax, and what you're doing with it, documentation. So you want to keep documentation for sure, but that's the thing about, you want to make sure your hive is healthy also, because they're gonna eventually it's like the veterinarians. They don't want to prescribe. They don't want to diagnose the hives because they're not beekeepers. So now Texas A&M is offering free courses to them to get them to come and learn about bees so that they can do this veterinarian feed directive to prescribe antibiotics if needed. I have not seen the need for a vet myself.
He has a lot of hives. So you would have another box that looks just like this one on top of this one, and then you'd have 6 of these to get the minimum ag exempt of 5 acres. Max is 12 hives to 20 acres.
So what is the recommended minimum amount of acreage?
You have to have, well, if you live there, you have to have 6 acres, because they're gonna take an acre out for your house or your homestead, and then you can have 5 acres.
So you said recommended amount
To have the bees, not necessarily for the exemption.
for their forage.
Yeah.
Oh, for that?
So 10 years or so ago, went and got 32 hives, the ones that 16 of them died on. Went and got 32 hives from a commercial beekeeper, and he had 10,000 hives. And he said, where are you taking these bees? Oh, we're taking them over Sunset. Well, they're gonna die. They're gonna starve to death. And I said, what? He said, yeah, there's nothing to eat out there. So in this time of year, we do have things to eat. There will be beekeepers make honey. Some beekeepers will make 5 gallons per hive, surplus, that they can keep, and the bees still have honey. There will be beekeepers that won't make nothing. So, you know, I could be making honey at my house. A guy 3 miles from me is not making nothing and having to feed his bees. And it's happening in reverse, where I'm having to feed my bees and he's making honey. And I'm scratching my head going, well, why are we making honey? You know, and I'll go find out. You have to drive around your place 2 or 3 mile radius, and that's what bees work. They work about 8,000 acres a day. They don't change those 8,000 acres because they can't move, because that's their home. So they just work that same 8,000. So and that's what I want to get to with you guys is, when I went and learned from a guy in Wichita Falls a little bit about beekeeping, a mentor type thing, and he said, if you're doing this to get rich, you're doing the wrong thing, because you ain't gonna get rich. And so what he was trying to say is, there's different times of the year when nothing is produced, and you may have to feed your bees. And what I learned from him, he had to take water to his bees. He had water, you know, they have big water stations up around Wichita Falls. You go pay, a little bit of money and get a whole truckload of water. And the first day I was with him, we went out to bees and gave them water, like we was watering cows. So that's when I found out, how important water was. They need water to fan in the hive when it's 100 plus degrees outside. They're all fanning in that hive to circulate the air. And then they're bringing in water. So water and air combined together is cool temperatures like air conditioning. That's what they're doing with it. When they have larvae, they have to cool that larvae or they have to feed the larvae, and what they're breaking down with is water. They break down whatever substances it is. But when they bring the pollen in, they add honey to it, and that forms a bee bread. And so that bee bread is then taken and mixed with water by the bees and fed to the larvae. So they have to have pollen, they have to have carbohydrates, they have to have water. So my best performing hives are somewhere near water. So I don't ever want to keep bees that don't have a source of water within 200 or 300 yards. So, and most productive ones are going to be around lakes and rivers, things like that. Am I running over?
Not over, not yet, but
Okay.
we're right at time.
Okay.
So the recommended amount is it, you just gotta have something blooming within 2 to 3 miles of your hive, and you gotta have water for them. And you can use chicken feeders, chicken waters, and fill them full of marbles, because if they have to climb or they'll drown. Or you can get bird baths and fill them full of marbles and then put your water in there, and they'll go for that. But you do have to give them water. So, because people can have them, well, I guess depending on the city ordinance, you can have them in your backyard.
So that's what I was wondering, will they bother the neighbors? Is that an issue with?
So what we recommend is if you're in town and you have bees, and the city says it's okay for you to have bees, you should have at least a 6-foot privacy fence right out in front of the hive by about 2 or 3 feet, maybe right here. So when the bees leave, they have to go up and over. And so that gets up and over the neighbors' heads too. When they're coming in, they're coming up and down. And so that's what we recommend for inside of cities or things like that.
And bees inside the city do well, because people want to have pretty flowers.
They water their lawns.
They water their lawns, and they want to have pretty blooms, flowers in their yard, so they do really well. But you do have to, they're not gonna run over and attack your neighbor. But, a neighbor might get stung if they sit on them, so.
The most complaints I've had is the neighbor takes Dr. Pepper. They're pissed off because of the bees coming over to the Dr. Pepper. Yes, sir.
Can I develop a relationship with a beekeeper that can put the hives on my property?
Yeah, there's people who do hive management for tax purposes.
And we have our Facebook, here's our QR codes for our Facebook and our webpage, and you can just come over and click on them and join those groups, and you can come to our meetings, and we try to always have programs that talk about something in the beekeeping. We don't bring this stuff, this is the stuff we use for I use for the youth education program, and I take around to libraries and stuff to teach the kids about beekeeping. But, come on, see, we're the first Thursday of the month.
Do you have like a basic,
Yeah, every Thursday, it's less than
do
Thursday.
you have a basic list of like a starter kit?
Don't we have it on the website?
I don't know if we have it on the website, but these catalogs that we brought has they have different starter kits in them. I don't recommend buying the starter kit, because it's gonna be all the cheapest merchandise that they have. If you go, Orchlands has 25% of all beekeeping equipment off right now. And all of it is the most cheapest equipment that you can possibly get.
And cheap is not always best.
When you're talking about a suit, it's not good at all. We had a girl come pick up her nukes, and she had bought one from Tractor Supply, took it right out of the package, and the veil was ripped wide open before she even put it on. So you want this, you need a good quality product.
And Mantle Lake has it, like I said, on sale the 1st of March. And, I mean, it's not like, I mean, they're still like $100, but it's not like $150, you know what I mean? And, get one that's vented.
On
My
page
daughter and I drove
16,
all the way to where they are and tried them on to make sure we got one we liked.
page 16 of this Man Lake catalog, which we brought several, y'all can have them, or go to manlake.com. It has different things in those kits. You need all those things, it's just usually, they're not very high quality. The best, book just to read, I mean, I don't know if you should have this book, here at the library. I don't know if they have all these books, but these books were donated by Joe Lewis, what is his place called?
What's this place called again?
Basic Comanche.
Comanche Ranch or?
Yeah.
Comanche,
Yes.
something Comanche Ranch, but he's a member of the Wise Bee Club, and, I don't see this book here.
This is another good one.
Yeah, oh yeah, the Beekeeper's Handbook is good.
This is a real good one here.
The Beekeeper's Handbook is a lifetime reference book, so this is what mine looks like. You can take it out to the hive, and if you need to, look at it in the hive to help you find out what's going on in there. The only thing I don't like about it is black and white pictures. This one is a good quick read, it's a small book, and you can use, I think it can be checked out here. There's another version, First Lessons in Beekeeping, that's very small, written by C.P. Dayton.
Let me get a picture of that one, I'll make sure I
Okay.
order it and get it.
And it's a very quick read, you can check it out, it's not something that you have to buy, because it's about beekeeping when beekeeping was easy. Now we have pests and parasites that come along in the mid-80s that have made it difficult. A lot of the older beekeepers quit because it's frustrating to lose your bees. I lost over 100 hives this winter. It's very frustrating and depressing. Yes, ma'am.
Did y'all have a bad year this year because of all the rain, or what made y'all have a bad year?
So several beekeepers lost a lot of hives, and we believe that it was the fluctuation of rain and temperatures. They kind of made the end of going into last fall, so the end of the last summer. It kind of made it weird as far as what was going on with the weather and what was blooming and not blooming. So when, do y'all know those yellow buttercups and pink buttercups? If they have too much water, their pollen becomes poisonous to the larvae. So different fluctuations in the weather and different plants can have adverse effects. So I believe that it had something to do with that. At first I just thought I'm just a lousy beekeeper. And then I heard other people going, we lost a lot of hives this year.
And last summer, for some reason, gardening was really, really hard. Like, the tomatoes would never form. The flowers would form, but then you'd never get a tomato.
Right. Did the frost last fall or winter, does that kill bees, or what?
So it's better that the temperature be below 40 on them, and I mean, bees survive up in the upper territories at, -20.
So you don't need to like cover your hives or anything, you just leave
So
them.
we have one guy who wraps his hives in tar paper. He says he never loses a hive in the winter. Unless using the solar to help
Yeah.
heat the hive.
And some people put this in the top.
During the winter.
Well,
Or all the time?
it's all the time.
Okay.
This was donated too, so this was already in here, and they put this in there.
If it's like out on property, would you recommend putting the hives by like trees or?
So you want the hives in full sun because there's something called a hive beetle, small hive beetle.
Okay.
That loves dank, dark conditions, and they lay eggs in the honey. They hatch in 2 or 3 days. It ruins all the honey, and the bees leave. But they don't like sun because when the eggs hatch, they go out of the hive as larvae and go into the sand and pupate. So if the sun is there, then they get fried.
Okay.
This is a small hive trap, and you put it in between these little frames right here, and you can put mineral oil in it, and the bees will chase them in there, and they'll fall in these little holes in the top and drown.
Okay.
And then you just take these out and throw them away. So, yeah, they're not a big deal.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What about are there different species that are better or worse for honey or
So the Italian,
pretty much alike?
yeah, the Italian breed, it has the longest probuses to go deepest into the flowers. But it's not by much. I mean, we're talking, fraction of a millimeter. And the Carnolian bees are for more of a northern climate. They handle winter better than Italian bees, regular Italian bees do. So we don't do a lot of Carnolians down here, but we're starting to crossbreed a lot of that. But those bees make honey at different times of the year, different from the Italians that we have. So I would just say, stick with Italians, and if you're getting them if you catch a swarm or something, it's probably the greatest blessing you're ever gonna get, because it had genetics to survive whatever they're surviving.
If you catch a swarm, do you have to put it in a new box, or can you put it in the same box with your old hive?
You can add them together if you want to, but if they're of different races, they will tend to kill each other.
Okay.
There are different ways we can teach you to combine them,
Okay.
and then,
But you wouldn't take a swarm and go add it to
An
an
existing.
existing hive.
Oh,
You can.
yeah, that's what I was saying.
Because there'd be 2 queens,
there's
right?
gonna be a death match.
And I know
Well-
that bees is not cheap.
Really, it's just, just between the 2 queens, but if they're definite different races, like there's some Africanization going on there, and the Italians, and you throw them together, it's like black and red ants,
Yeah.
But if you do what we call a newspaper method, and put a piece of newspaper up here and put little cuts in it, and then put the other hive on top of it, then they have time to get used to each other and each other's smells.
Okay. But if you have the room in another open box, just put it there.
That's
So
why,
if you're a person who wants multiple hives, then you wanna put it in another box, but if you have, the stronger the hive is, the more chance you're gonna have of making honey. But there again, the more chance you're gonna have of them starving if there's nothing to eat and you didn't feed them.
that's why people, when they buy these nukes, they save these boxes, so in case they do get a swarm, they can go catch it in this. And this has openings on it, so you can keep them in here for a long time, until they outgrow it. And then once they outgrow it, then you have to put it in something different, or they'll swarm again. So, all right.
Alrighty, I'm gonna have to cut off the questions, sorry guys, but we are past closing now. So thank you all again for coming out. Just wanted to remind everyone about the In Full Bloom event. It is coming up on Saturday, June 24th. We'll have a native plant presentation by Master Gardener Mike James. We're gonna have some seed swap, as well as seed ball making and some pressed flower crafts. I'm trying to get some more presenters as well. And then stay tuned for the presentation we'll have next month. If you haven't signed in on the sign-in sheet and you want updates about our upcoming presentations, go ahead and do that and include email and I'll get you added to that list. Thank you all so much for coming out and presenting.